Hi, I'm Rigger. This is your right, and today let's talk about some Fitbit. Anyway, before that though, be sure to like the video if you like it, share it if you think others would like it, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and subscribe if you want to see more. Oh, and spoilers for the finale, by the way, we are talking about Volume 9 now, so there's your warning. I was gonna try and get this video out for yesterday, but I didn't want it lumped in with all the April Fool's stuff, and yeah. So this was my contribution to that over on Twitter. Which fits perfectly actually, because it brings up exactly what we're going to talk about today. I will say it did hurt me inside to spell mum like that, but I'm playing to my audience who is predominantly American, so what can you do? So, everyone's been mentioning this as a possible endpoint. Raven rescues them. Initially I said the staff would fall and they'd have to go get it and make a portal back, because we know that works. But when that didn't happen, this was also everyone else's other solution, that Raven can get them out. And it sort of makes sense in that also people sort of feel like when's Raven coming back, like she feels like she should be sort of relevant at some point. And yeah, you could do something with that, like people have to go find Raven and convince her to get back involved with what's going on. I'm assuming she doesn't even have a scroll on her, or that she's out in the middle of nowhere as well, whether there's a signal out there, Amity or not. And even then, Amity only put its signal out for a short amount of time, and she doesn't want to be found, that's kind of the point. I just feel it's very unlikely that all those things added up and Raven wanted to get involved from just what RWBY said even. It just seems like it's confirming what she would think, and she has no way of knowing everything that went down in the other realms. Or even if they wanted to check with Raven what happened, they can't just easily find her, it feels like. You know, other people don't have a way to find her as easily. Basically, it's just making a lot of assumptions for Raven to just turn up. So, you could do a story where out in the world, like Ty or Crow go and track down Raven as like a mission to try and portal to Yang to find her. Sure. I wouldn't hate that, getting Team Stark back together sort of, or what's left of it. But let's try a different flavour here, because even if we do this journey to track down Raven or whatever, her just needing to be convinced to portal to Yang and that's how they get out feels way too easy and kinda lame. It just makes the journey on the other side in what I'm calling Wonderland way more pointless. Do they just, like, accept that they're stuck there and wait around just talking on the beach until suddenly Raven turns up and fixes all their problems? That's kinda lame. Or do they go on a grand journey on the other side, but ultimately it ends up not working and they fail, but then Raven just turns up and solves it? Also pretty lame. They really should be finding their own way out and doing something crazy over there, and, you know, bonding, and they get themselves home. So, find some way back under their own power is what I'm saying. So basically, no, this is not a video suggesting Raven can go get them. She shouldn't be able to because of, like, space and dimensions and stuff, but rather than leave it at that, let's make this more interesting. There is a connection between the characters and the idea of this power, so let's expand, let's make something of it anyway. Sometimes the best answer isn't to ignore something and say it doesn't work, but show the characters having this thought too, and having something else happen. I agree that it's getting towards the time Raven should probably get back to being involved again. So I was thinking, how about we tie this all together? And I came up with something to be a little more cohesive. The way Raven's portals work isn't exactly clear, right? We know that when she forms bonds with people, she can create a link with them, and her semblance allows her to create a portal to that person. But we don't really know all the mechanics of how it works. So I think that's how we make this work, and start defining a few things and look at how we can tie it into the rest of the plot lines we have going on. So the whole, like, Amity thing, or people finding Raven, they're pretty sort of tenuous, and I don't really think it's how we should get her involved. So let's look at some other options. You know how Raven knew exactly when to turn up for Yang? Let's sort of play on that idea. It'll never be totally consistent because of circumstance and backtracking done later in the story, like, why didn't Raven turn up when Yang almost died protecting RWBY in that flashback? Whatever. We get the idea, but for the most part, when things got very serious, Raven knew to show up and help, fulfilling her vow to save her once. Raven, when she forms emotional bonds with people, can portal to them, like a linking between their souls. Now lots of people discussing RWBY because of aura and semblances really try and turn the idea of a soul into just hard numbers and facts, but I think we should all reevaluate that idea more, a little bit more spiritually. The soul is the essence of life. There are intangible factors beyond more than just powering a semblance. Love, connections, consciousness, thought. Those unexplainable little touches, like if Pyrrha really did just nudge John in the right direction here and there. or how Penny was really real underneath, despite how she was created from another person's soul. Life is more than just a mana bar. So, on a mechanical level, you can explain Raven's semblance with aura, right? She uses her aura to locate the soul of someone else she's bonded with, and those two souls resonate due to emotional connections during life, and in her semblance, the actual power of it is creating a little space bridge between the two in a form of a portal. So, it doesn't mean she can't go to you if your aura drops or something. Your aura barrier is just the protective amount you have, it's not your whole life. You're still alive once it's broken, it's just your reserves you can use for defense. So, like, I don't think Raven would know if Yang's aura broke, but I do think she would know if she died or was dying, perhaps. She's not psychic. She doesn't know where everyone is and all their status at all times, if the aura breaks, that kind of stuff. But she would probably know if one of her possible points of reference just blipped out of existence. She surely knows what someone she's bonded with dying feels like. Whether she had one to Ruby's mother or not, she did have one to Vinal, so she would have experienced that then. So she definitely would know whatever that feels like to her. So I think we have some branching paths to take here. There's path A, where she feels Yang die, as if the conditions Yang is under now is the same as if she died. Even though she's not dead, it's like she's blipped out of existence. If this happened, would it motivate her to get involved? I don't know. Look, hard demeanor or not, Raven feels for her daughter. Raven isn't heartless. She's just cold and tries her best to downplay her emotions and think logically and scheme. But I wonder if, logically, this would just throw her into a depression and grief such that she wouldn't want to return. That's a maybe, but we can make it more fun because there's one person who centers all of this, and that's Crow. We saw Crow is distressed and worried. He doesn't know if the girls made it out. He has no way to confirm what happened. So if Raven is distressed thinking Yang is dead, in her distressed grief and rage, I bet she'd portal to Crow, and probably try her best to basically murder him at least to start. I don't think she'd probably do it, but I think she'd lash out trying to find someone to take out her pain on, and Crow was the one she knew was with Yang and was sort of said he would protect them and Ruby, so, it would fall to him in her, emotional moment. I know that we all think Raven's a bitch, but there's a difference between telling yourself you feel a certain way and being confronted by that actual reality. Not to mention, she'd probably want to also get back at Oz and just everyone for destroying even more. And Raven is still a maiden, so her wrath could be quite mighty. Assuming they calm her down, this would break Crow, which I don't really like the idea of putting more grief on him, because Raven appeared thinking Yang died, and to him that's going to confirm Yang died. Eesh. And then that's obviously going to help him probably conclude the others are likely dead as well, and that's even more crushing. You could say that they then have to go to Vacuo and check the others, like Ruby and that, because they don't know them. But I also feel it would fall to Raven then to go tell Ty. See, Crow can't go with her because he needs to stay because she doesn't have another way to get him or her back towards Vacuo, or at least the ship. She doesn't have another link out that way. That we know of, at least. Now, would I love to see a reaction between Ty and Raven, especially over something as powerful as thinking their daughter is dead? Like, Raven appears to tell him the news and they talk it out? Yes, I would love to see that. It sounds amazing. But it doesn't really pull Stark back together, and it doesn't get Raven into the fray. But I think we could. Instead, what if we took an option B? That Raven notices something weird. She can't totally explain it, but something is wrong. Her connection she has with Yang is fuzzy. Like, she thought it blinked out of existence for a second, and it terrified her because she felt Yang die. And then she didn't, and then it's weird. Something feels off. However that feels to Raven, it's weird and she's never felt it before. So, let's take the logical path here. You show Raven try and make a portal to check. And it's really messed up. Like, the portal is glitchy and there's red electrical sparks flying off it. She touches it and it either really hurts her and zaps her away, or maybe it blows her back across the room when she tries and makes contact, and then it just fizzles out. Now that's weird. So we're playing with the idea that Yang's soul exists, and her semblance is trying to link to it, to, take those two locations and create a portal between them. But it's trying to make that portal, that bridge, across a dimensional barrier. Like an existential barrier, be it the afterlife or somewhere else. So rather than stay with the boring answer that it doesn't work, or the other answer that she just never tries it, or the sort of too easy answer that it does work, we sit on a middle ground. That it sort of works, and it's confusing, and something is clearly wrong. Now it's time for Raven to problem solve. So what's the next step? Testing if other portals work, I suppose. So, decision. Crow or Tai? Crow is supposed to be watching Yang, but she knows Tai is in a safe place, just in case the portal to Crow is a terrible idea, considering he might be around whatever has happened with Yang, so maybe she doesn't want to portal into that. This is where you choose what you want to do, have her pick whichever decision you think is most likely. Do you want her to reunite Stark or not? If you want her to reunite Stark, then you go do a test with Tai. He sees this, like she portals in and he notices, and he stops her, and they talk, and Raven explains the weirdness of this portal, maybe even shows him. And Tai and her have it out, because he insists on coming. He saw everything RWBY said, whether she did or not. He knows, they know more about this stuff going on, and you're telling him that something's up with his daughter, so he insists on coming. He needs to know if he can save RWBY, and most importantly, Yang's his daughter too, and he wants just as much to figure this out. You could even make this a really fun head trip for Crow, or maybe even at the end of next volume, he's wherever he's at, and then portal, and he looks up and it's Raven and Tai together? Like, whoa, that's not a bad little reveal. Or you could do it another way, where Raven decided to investigate directly, thus leaves off Team Stark as an idea until we circle all the way back around to Beacon, as that's when they will catch up with Tai on the loop. So, in this one, Raven instead chooses to portal to Crow, maybe to see if she can help, or just to confront Crow with what's happened. And then, Crow can be faced with this little puzzle. He gets confirmation that they're alive, or at least that Yang is alive, because Raven says she's definitely alive somewhere, but they're faced with this crazy portal and have no idea what that means. And you can say, well, they were going into an alternate dimension, that was the plan. So maybe keep trying the portal to see when they get out, if that's the issue. But they're stuck on this ship, so they can't, find out yet. But they can also problem solve ahead and say, well, hey, maybe Oz knows more about this. Maybe there's things we can do when we get there. So Raven joins the squad on the flight to Vacuo to investigate what happened, and then from there on, gets tied into the story again. Man, I'm just thinking about it being awkward where Crow's trying to get close to Robin, but Raven is, on the ship. Ugh. Nothing works out for that guy. But that idea aside, in general, this, again, ties Raven back in, and where you go from there is up to you, depending when you want them to arrive and how Volume 9's travel works out in the other realm. Perhaps they get to Vacuo by the time Team RWBY is back. Or they arrive before that, but Raven's info lets the others who've been grieving know that at least Yang is alive, and therefore perhaps the others are too, and that helps them with their grief, and maybe they start problem solving. Maybe if you want to involve Oz's knowledge there, or maybe you can involve using the Sword of Destruction somehow, if you wanted to use that as part of the plan to get them out somehow. Even if it doesn't work and the girls find their own way home, it sort of ties everyone in together. It does the job of pulling these strands back together. Not to mention, Yang may be very different when she returns, so they all might be faced with this, grand adventure, and then they finally get home, and when Yang finally does get home, she's suddenly confronted with Raven, and that could be interesting to revisit that relationship. Not to mention, it solves another little, convenience problems that can help. So, when the girls return from wherever they are, what's the chance that they can return, directly to Shade, or even into Vacuo? Is that just, because it's going to be magic, they can go wherever they like? Well, if you want to make that sound less convenient, then you can just get home. You can then have, the team of girls and Jean and Neo spat out wherever they end up, wherever they can get back home. But then, because Raven is in on things, she will detect when Yang's sort of signal has cleared up, and then she can make a bridge to wherever they get sent, and then they can go straight from that back through to Shade. So she solves that little travel problem, and it doesn't feel as convenient and contrived. The real thing to keep in mind is just where her points of travel are, so that would totally work, because Yang appears, she makes the portal to Yang, the others walk through, and the portal is also there for Crow, so it doesn't really matter. So as long as they're all in these key points, you can make everything feel more natural. Possibly also you can then have something like adding another maiden in alongside Winter if Salem does turn back up and we do a big attack on Shade. If there is a huge event there, you have more powerful people on your side. Anyway, this is a long discussion, and I wanted to highlight just the multiple options that exist that can be found by walking some of these lines between the easy option and the outright saying no. Let's address the Raven idea, but not have it be a solution. Instead, make it a really good way to tie her back into the plot. Smooth transitions in and out of these plot lines is always good for any story. It's a natural way to pull the loose hanging threads and form a more tight-knit adventure. But these are just some ideas I had about, this sort of very commonly thrown up solution and what we can do with it that isn't just the obvious yes or no. But anyway, that's all for now. Until next time, my name is Rigger. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope I did alright.